The Blighted Lands of Caelid are home to many different sects of spellcasting, ranging from dragon cults to flame worshippers and even servants of rot. Of course, General Radahn himself was well versed in gravity sorcery, and the town of Celia was once a revered place of learning. While Melania's rot has forever changed the landscape, there's still a good deal of spells available for us to pick up. Hello again, fellow Tarnished. I'm StoneBear13. Grab yourself some boluses, and remember to thank Torrent for protecting you from the rot, as we grab every sorcery and incantation within Caelid. For this video, I'm going to switch it up, starting with incantations this time. Our first can be found near the Rotview Balcony site of Grace. From here, head northeast, beyond the roaming squad of Rot Boys, and just after the Stake of America before the T-Rex dogs, you'll see a golden scarab, which will contain Whirl, O Flame. This incantation will require 13 faith and cost 19 FP to cast, releasing a spiral flow of fire from your hand. Although this spell has a decently long cast time, short range, and lacks tracking, it can be charged, increasing both its range and potency. Dealing pure fire damage, it is buffable from multiple sources, and is boosted by the Giant Seal for 20% increased damage. While this will find little use against smaller enemies, if used close range on larger foes, this incantation becomes much more viable, with the potential to hit multiple times. Next, we'll head to the Fort Gale North site of Grace. Go south up the rocks and run beyond the enemies towards the fort's front gate. You will catch the attention of the archer on the hill, but just ignore them and keep on running. Head up the steps, past the gate, and dismount Torrent to continue going around. Eliminate the guard at the ladder, and wrap around the back end of the fort. Between the two flame chariots, you'll find Flame, Grant Me Strength. This incantation will require 15 faith and cost 28 FP to cast, granting you one of the best damage boosting body buffs in the game. Lasting 30 seconds, you'll gain a 20% boost to all physical damage dealt, a 20% increase to fire damage, and an additional 11% boost to stamina recovery. Since this is a body buff, it cannot stack with Exalted Flesh or Blood Boil Aromatic. However, it can stack multiplicatively with Golden Vow, allowing faith-based physical damage builds to really dish out damage. This is one of the best incantations in the game, and I highly recommend picking it up, as it's an absolute staple in almost any faith build. For our third incantation, we're going to have to trudge through the swamp over to the northeast shore. Starting from the inner Aeonia site of Grace, we'll head due north beyond some giant land squirts, where we'll find the trail of an invisible scarab. Timing your strike, slay the scarab to be rewarded with Poison Armament. This incantation will require 10 faith and cost 15 FP to cast, enchanting your main hand weapon with 70 poison buildup per strike for 60 seconds. Our final incantation found in the open world is hidden off to the northeast of Caelid just before the Bestial Sanctum. If you've yet to find yourself over there, you can start from the Dragon Barrow Fork site of Grace. Follow the path southeast up the hill to the Minor Erd Tree, being sure to turn northeast when the zone text appears. Stick close to the western rocks and keep going uphill until you see a small path to the north. Investigating down the path will reveal yet another scarab, with this one containing Bestial Constitution. Requiring 9 faith and 10 FP to cast, this bestial incantation will alleviate all blood loss or frostbite buildup, but unfortunately does not cure the frostbite status effect when used. I will not be covering Gurranq or any of his incantations in this video, as they're directly tied to his questline. However, we do still have a few more incantations to grab, and to find them, we'll return to the western side of Caelid, over to the Caelid Highway South side of Grace. Mount on Torrent and head south, staying the course until you see the ruins of a church to the east. As for heading in, I would recommend using the side entrance, since the front door has a banished knight pathing around. Once you've dispatched the guard, you're free to use the altar at the Cathedral of Dragon Communion. Much like its counterpart in Limgrave, this altar will have 3 Dragon Cult incantations for us to learn, which are all boosted by the Dragon Communion seal for 15% increased damage and extra status effect buildup. These 3 available incantations will require 1 Dragon Heart to purchase, as well as 15 Faith and 12 Arcane to use, and they can all be used while mounted. First off, Glintstone Breath, which will release a cone of pure magic damage that can be extended and free aimed. The base cast will require 28 FP, with a fully extended cast requiring at least 52 FP. Next, we have Rotten Breath, which releases a spew of scarlet rot that can be extended and free aimed. A normal cast will require 36 FP, with a full cast requiring 60 FP at minimum. This breath attack will inflict an advanced scarlet rot debuff, which is exclusive to only 3 sources. Having the same duration, this will deal more damage over time than Scarlet Rot from almost any other source. Our final incantation available is Dragonice, which, as you can guess, spews frost, inflicting damage and frostbite buildup within a large cone. Normal cast will require 36 FP, with a full cast needing at least 60 FP to execute. This incantation inflicts very high frostbite at a base rate of 110 per tick, and, as with the others, it can be extended and free aim. I did want to mention that the Cathedral of Dragon Communion will allow you to learn any Dragon Cult incantations you have unlocked by slaying the named dragonkin scattered throughout the lands between. I will have a video on all of these dragons, their locations, and their associated spells coming, so be sure to subscribe so you can keep an eye out for that. With incantations wrapped up, we'll jump right into sorceries. And to kick things off, we'll head to the Inner Aeonia Site of Grace. Go west to reach the Street of Sages ruins, and inside the largest ruin to the west, you'll find a staircase to a cellar. Beyond the door, inside the chest, you'll find a rock sling. This gravity sorcery will require 18 intelligence and cost 18 FP to cast. Conjuring 3 rocks of gravity magic, you launch them at your foes, dealing mostly physical damage. This sorcery is boosted by the Meteorite Staff, which is located in the building just south of where we obtained Rock Sling, for 30% increased damage. This is a very popular early game sorcery, and for good reason. Aside from its easy boost from the staff, it has excellent tracking and an innate anti-dodge mechanic to it. Most enemies will dodge as soon as a spell is cast, but since this sorcery has a travel time, most foes will dodge way too early. It does have its limitations though, as any contact with one of the rocks, while traveling or conjuring, will cause them to explode, rendering the spell severely weakened, if not just wasted. For our next sorcery, we'll return to the Inner Aeonia Site of Grace, and head north-northeast onto the shoreline beyond the giant land squirts. Hidden in the base of the cliff, you'll find the entrance to Celia Crystal Tunnel. This is the same dungeon you're transported to upon opening the trap chest in the cellar of the Dragonburnt ruins back in Limgrave, so some of you may be familiar. Clear out the pests and the mining crew in the first room, and jump onto the central wooden shack. Jump east over the wreckage, and follow the tunnel. Go up the ladder, across the plank, and inside the next shack. After defeating the Glintstone Miner, you can open the chest to find Rock Blaster. Requiring 21 intelligence, this sorcery is boosted by the Digger's Staff for 20% increased damage. Costing 22 FP at minimum to cast, the final slam can be delayed, draining FP over time. Unlike with charging, this will not increase the damage of the final hit, but you can move freely, although slowly, and deal damage with the end of your staff. This sorcery is pretty niche. While the damage isn't terrible, you will often find yourself absorbing at least a few hits before finishing your cast. Leaving the mines, we'll head into town, specifically to Celia, Town of Sorcery. If you haven't discovered the Town of Celia yet, you should definitely go watch my walkthrough of the area to make sure not to miss anything in this mysterious town. After lighting the southwestern brazier, make your way to the middle of town, and within the newly unsealed chest, you'll find Night Comet. This invisibility sorcery will require 38 intelligence and cost 21 FP to cast. Boosted by the Staff of Loss for 30% increased damage, the spell can be charged, cast while in motion, and chain cast. As an invisibility sorcery, enemies cannot see the spell, making this naturally anti-dodge, almost guaranteeing a hit with every cast. The only drawback to this spell is its range. Not that it's short, but it would definitely benefit from a longer travel distance in many scenarios. This is actually my favorite sorcery in the entire game, and has been my primary damage spell for multiple New Game Plus runs, finding itself viable for everything ranging from trash mobs to even the Elden Beast itself. Getting off my soapbox, we'll head beyond Celia, off to the hideaway hidden to the north. This is a tricky area to find, so we'll start at the Church of the Plague. Heading north, we'll ignore all the enemies through the graveyard and aim for the battle mage near the crypt in the back. Behind him, we'll find the most convincing illusory wall in the game, and within will be the site of grace to Celia Hideaway. This dungeon is filled with illusory walls, crystals, and a lot of snails. Take your time and get to the fog wall at the end. Beyond the wall, you'll face a trio of rotten crystallians, and they will not be kind. Once you manage to shatter the triplets, you'll be rewarded with the sorcery Crystal Torrent. Requiring 47 intelligence, this spell will cost 20 FP to start up, and drains 5 FP per tick. The sorcery is boosted by the Crystal Staff and the Rotten Crystal Staff for 10% increased damage. One of my first videos on Elden Ring actually covered this spell in depth as a viable alternative to Comet Azure. This sorcery has tracking, and drains FP at a considerably lower rate than Comet Azure, enabling it to be readily used without pairing it with your Flask of Wondrous Physic. Overall, Crystal Torrent is a fantastic spell to use against large enemies where you can take advantage of the entire damaging cone. Returning to the Church of the Plague, our next sorcery will be found to the west. Exit the church and head south towards the Celia Gateway. Once you enter the gateway, dismount Torrent and clear the invisible guard, as they will block your path. Exiting, turn north to see the Swamp Lookout Tower, where you'll find a bloodhound guarding the cell. Bring him to heal, and inside the cell you'll find Eternal Darkness. The sorcery will require 35 intelligence and cost 25 FP to cast, releasing a massive black hole above you. The anomaly will last 10 seconds, drawing any spells cast into it, nullifying them. Well, not so much nullifying, but rather pulling into orbit and slingshotting off elsewhere. After some testing, I found that your spells are completely unaffected, which is strange considering exactly how effective this spell actually is. That being said, for whatever reason, not all hostile spells are affected, and some can pass right through, most notably Pest Threads, and unsurprisingly, Dragonfire. Now for our final spell, which will definitely require the most effort to obtain. In order to acquire the last sorcery, you'll have to have initiated the Radon Festival and beaten General Radon, obtaining his Site of Grace. From here, mount on Torrent and follow the shoreline north, all the way to the base of the cliffs to find a door. Within is the War Dead Catacombs, which is home to a lot of restless spectral enemies and a basement of rot. Luckily, we don't have very far to go, just down into the rot-filled basement. As you enter what I like to call the Brawl Room, stay to the right and drop down after the first broken staircase. In the rot, get to the center of the room and make your way west to a chest that contains the sorcery Collapsing Stars. Requiring 36 intelligence and costing 18 FP per cast, this gravity sorcery is also boosted by the Meteorite Staff for 30% extra damage. As the upgraded version of Gravity Well, damage is not the main feature of this spell. The gravity magic the spell releases will draw enemies hit towards you, making it a spell sword's best friend. This is a very strong spell in PvP, as the multiple projectiles can be difficult to dodge. This sorcery can be used with high consistency, especially with smaller foes, as long as you account for the recovery time of the cast. And with that, we've collected all of Caelid's spells that aren't tied to any questlines. If this video has been helpful for you, please consider leaving a like or a comment. And if you'd like to see any more of my Elden Ring content, be sure to subscribe and click the bell so you can be notified. Once again, I'm StoneBear13, and as always, thank you for watching.